our next guest, Victor T. Foia. And Victor, it is a pleasure, sir. Thank you for taking the time to be with us.
Thank you very much, Steve.
All right, tell me, first of all, your story in and of itself, to me, is fascinating. Born in Transylvania, and at the age of 22, you escaped from behind the Iron Curtain. You defected to Italy. You spent months in UN refugee camps. You came to the United States. You went to a university in Illinois in Dallas, and then a career in an international corporate executive level, and now you're writing historical fiction. So, wow, I mean, we could sit here and talk for the next half hour about that, but tell me how that, obviously it's I guess a lot has to do with you being from Transylvania. How did you become transfixed almost on Dracula and his legacy and his history and everything about him?
That is a good term, actually, transfixed, because, well, I met him first time when I was about 6 years old. And I was on my first school trip, and they took us to see his birth house, which is still standing after 500 years. And of course, he was presented to us as a national hero because he saved his nation from the Islamic threat of the Ottoman Turks. So I was very fascinated that he traveled all over Europe and spoke a lot of languages. And I said, boy, I'd love to be like that one day, especially that during the Cold War in Romania, that being a communist country was more or less like a prison camp. You couldn't travel. We weren't allowed to travel abroad. So I got this notion that would be so nice. And then about the age of 10, I promised myself I'll find a way to get out of the country. And I remember telling my friends, which was very dangerous and unwise at that time, that said, when I grow up, I'm going to run away. Well, in the meantime, I went to university. I took about 4 out of the 5 years of physics. And then an opportunity came to escape. And you don't pass those opportunities because they don't come twice. I found myself in a refugee camp in Italy, and then in Chicago. And then in Chicago, I realized, man, I don't speak English. I don't have a profession because having studied physics for 4 years is not a profession. And I have no friends. I had, I think, maybe $12 in my pocket, a brand new toothbrush, a razor, and an oversized suit that the World Council of Churches had given me.
Wow.
So I said, well, and then I happened to walk through downtown, and I see on a marquee the word Dracula. And I said, damn, I said, is it allowed to say that? No, probably not. I said, how do these people know Dracula? This is a big country, Romania is nothing. And they said, well, everybody knows Dracula.
Well, let me stop you there, if I might, for a second, Victor. Tell people, that, you know, people hear the name Dracula, and they think of vampire movies, you know, for the most part. Talk about the real Dracula and the fictional Dracula.
Well, this was the moment of revelation for me in 1970 in Chicago, when I said, people know Dracula. I thought they knew the Dracula that I knew, the national hero, the warlord, the king. And they say, oh no, they're Bela Lugosi. They're like, good evening, may I introduce myself? That kind of thing. So I was very shocked, and I tell you, I was offended because it just didn't sound right. So then and there, 1970, I promised myself that I will research and give his life story the way he would have liked to tell it, not the way Hollywood told it. So this is the beginning of my quest and research of about 40 years to bring this story to life. So in the book, you see the real character. It's a septology, if you know what that means. It's a 7-volume series. Volume 1 is out. Volume 2 under construction, coming out in December. And then a volume every December until 2018 when I'm done.
Wow.
So in this story, you will see the development of Dracula from about the age of 13 and a half until he disappears. And I'm not going to say he dies because his body was never found. And that's one of the reasons that gave... the
vampire legend, yeah.
He did other things that were very strange to people, so they kept asking themselves, is he one of us or is he something else?
Right.
And all of that. Well, everything that we know about him or the world knows about him is from sources, the writings that circulated through Europe right after, during his lifetime. You know, Gutenberg invented the movable type printing press about the 1450s, and then this allowed new documents to be now printed and circulated. So his life story, as written by, or his deeds, I should say, written by his enemies, became a bestseller only second after the Bible, after the Gutenberg Bible. It was translated into 7 languages and circulated widely through Europe, even in his lifetime. But those are the sources of documents, the sources of information about Dracula that Bram Stoker later on found out. So what we know is either what his enemies wrote or or Bram Stoker.
And now we're getting this fresh perspective.
The way his crew would have said it, or himself. So you see him grow up, you see him go through all the trials and tribulation. His life reads like a hero's journey. It's something like from Stephen Campbell manual, the way his life. So this is why it takes so long, because there are significant events taking place in his lifetime that I have to cover, and then you got the backdrop of the ending Middle Ages and the beginning, or
the Renaissance. That's what I was going to ask you. That's where this takes place. Let me tell the folks we're talking to Victor T. Foia, the author of the Dracula Chronicles, and this is Book 1, Son of the Dragon. And I'm as fascinated by not only your story, but now what you just told me, that this is Book 1, Book 2 coming out in December, and then another book until 2018. I mean, how do you go about doing that? For those of us watching those of you watching at Newsmax, you see that he's sitting in a room. Are you going to not leave that room for the next 11 years or 9 years, whatever it is?
I do work 7 days a week and some days 20 hours a day. But it sounds like I'm producing.
Maybe there's a little Dracula in you.
Yes.
but
children of the night. Oh, okay. So the thing is that I do, between volumes, I try to do other things. I mean, there is artwork to cover, and there's some trying to sell the book,
sure.
All those things. I hope you're showing people my URL so they know where to go and look at the book. I cannot see you on the screen right now.
Well,
so
I'm holding up the book. You could tell us the website right now, and I'll repeat it. I'll certainly repeat it. Yeah.
It's www.draculachronicles.com.
That's all right. DraculaChronicles.com.
One word.
That is very easy to remember. DraculaChronicles.com. And go ahead. I was going to ask you about finish up, because then I want to ask you about really the cultural phenomenon that's kind of branched from Dracula. But go ahead. Tell us more about what this volume is about.
At this site they will find all the information. There's FAQs. There is my biographies there with all the Iron Curtain stuff. There is how to buy the book, and you can order an autograph copy right from there. So all of them. Enough of the commercial. Let's go back to
No, that's all right. There's nothing wrong with the commercial. I was going to ask you about the cultural phenomenon like Hunger Games and others. Dracula seems to he's at the forefront. It's I don't know if it's a revitalization, if it ever did disappear for a while, but how do you view that?
Steve, he's been famous now for 500 years. You know that he influenced Machiavelli, who wrote his how-to-do manual on how to rule a country or a province, the manual of the prince. He influenced, Machiavelli apparently had access to the deeds of Dracula, as I explained before, in circulation, and it was about 75 years after Dracula's disappearance that Machiavelli wrote that book. And he is quoted as being the sort of the inventor of the saying that it is better to be feared than to be loved. Well, he took that from Dracula. Another person who got inspired by him was Ivan the Terrible, and I think he was inspired to do terrible things. But he's been famous for 500 years, and what I find fascinating in my research now is that this transition between, or this space between vampire and reality is kind of a link between them. People on both sides. I've had hundreds of people literally tell me, I like about the vampires, but I like to learn the real story, and they can't. I get 2 comments from every person who reads the book. One, and both of them are criticisms. One is, I cannot put the book down, and 2, I have to wait too long for volume 2.
Well, that is a great commercial. But I think a lot of people are going to be amazed when they read this. They're going to be exposed because, like I said, and don't be insulted by this, but I think a lot of people, just like you said, know Dracula as a vampire from the movies and whatnot. They don't know about this. And this story in Volume 1, obviously it starts when he's a young man and he's proving himself and he seeks out danger. So there's a whole side to this person, to Dracula, that people are just going to find fascinating and exciting.
And I think the reason this legend doesn't die is because his story by itself may not be satisfying to people. Vampirism by itself is not satisfying. You put these things together, and it is irresistible. And why that is so, well, it probably take a scientist to explain that, but there is this yearning that we all have for a person that is strong and beyond what we can do. And in fact, you can see even in popular art about Dracula, he is always protective in a way of the weak. Now, of course, depends on the depiction of du jour, but he is a strong man who does not prey on the weak. In his real life, he had put his life on the line for individuals, for women. He was a bit, he liked women, I have to confess. But he also put his life on the line for his country at a time when his odds of survival was zero.
Well, and I was going to say, I got to tell you, Victor, that I was really looking forward to talking to you, mainly as a break from all the news of the day. But I got to tell you, talking to you, finding out about your background before I started the show today, and knowing what's in the book, I'm very excited to now read it. And I can't, I'm sure I'll be saying that I can't wait for Volume 2 in December, and we'll definitely have you back.
I'll come back for Volume 2.
Yes, sir. All right. Well, listen, really, thank you very, very much. I really appreciate it. And best of luck with the book. And it's DraculaChronicles.com. And you can find out everything you need to know about the book and about the great author, Victor T. Foia. Thank you again, sir.
Thank you very much, Steve.
Bye-bye.